Hi everyone, welcome back to the Murder Tapes podcast, season 3, episode 5. I spent my weekend at the mom's tattoo shop in Austin because my boyfriend wanted to get a Longhorn tattoo since we both went to UT, and it came out so well. I was kind of jealous that I didn't get one, but I couldn't figure out what I wanted, so I'm waiting a little longer. But aside from that, I hope you all had a great weekend, and today we're going to be talking about the Shanda Renee Sharer case. On the late morning of January 11th, 1992, in the quiet town of Madison, Indiana, a routine walk through a peaceful field turned into a scene of horror. A hunter, heading to his favorite spot, stumbled upon a sight that would soon haunt the community. He found a badly burned body, partially wrapped in a red blanket, lying in the field. Shocked and alarmed, he quickly called 911. Within 20 minutes, authorities arrived to deal with Jefferson County's first homicide in over 3 years. The scene was both eerie and confusing. The body, clearly female and with arms stretched upward, were so charred that identifying her was nearly impossible. A soda bottle filled with an accelerant was found nearby, hinting at the brutal nature of the crime. As investigators began the difficult task to identifying the victim, the early 90s climate of fear, the satanic panic, cast a long shadow. Concerns that this might be a ritualistic murder added a chilling edge to the case. Then, just when things seemed to be at a standstill, a dramatic turn unfolded. That night, a 15-year-old named Toni Lawrence, visibly distressed and accompanied by her worried parents, walked into the Indiana State Police Station. She had crucial information about the murder, and her revelations promised to break the case wide open. It would be revealed that the victim was 12-year-old Shanda Renee Sharer. Shanda was born on June 6, 1979, in Pineville, Kentucky. Her early years were marked by her parents' divorce when she was very young. Despite this, Shanda maintained a close bond with her mother, Jacqueline Vaught, and her father, Stephen Sharer, along with his new wife, Sharon. From a young age, Shanda was the type of person who drew people to her. With her bubbly personality, outgoing nature, and infectious fun, she easily made friends. At school, she stood out as a cheerleader and volleyball player, known for her intelligence and strong grades. In June 1991, just around her 12th birthday, Shanda and her mother moved to New Albany, Indiana. The move was made so that Shanda could spend more time with her father and be closer to him. She started attending Hazelwood Middle School in New Albany, where early in the school year, she got into a confrontation with 14-year-old Amanda Hevron. The two ended up in detention together, and after a tense start, they resolved their differences and became friends. However, Shanda's mother, Jackie, was concerned about the new friendship. Since it began, Shanda's grades had started to slip, and she found herself in trouble more frequently. As their friendship deepened, Shanda and Amanda began exchanging love letters. Things took a troubling turn in October when they attended a school dance and crossed paths with Amanda's ex-girlfriend, 16-year-old Melinda Lovelace. The sight of Shanda and Amanda together sent Melinda into a rage. At the dance, Melinda attempted to confront Shanda, but Amanda intervened. In the weeks that followed, Melinda's anger escalated. She publicly threatened Shanda and sent Amanda letters expressing a desire to see Shanda dead. Concerned for her daughter's safety and disturbed by the explicit content of Amanda's letters to Shanda, Jackie and Stephen decided it was best to move Shanda to a different school. By the end of November, Shanda had transferred to Our Lady of Perpetual Help Catholic School. Even after Shanda transferred schools, her relationship with Amanda Hevron continued. Amanda kept writing letters and calling Shanda at home. However, Shanda was preoccupied with adjusting to her new school and wasn't responding as eagerly as Amanda hoped. This is where the story takes a chilling turn. What initially seemed like a case of a jealous lover's quarrel quickly spiraled into something far more sinister and malicious. This escalation would lead to a horrific act that would forever change the lives of 4 people and tragically end one young life. Before we get into what took place, I'm going to give a detailed description of each perpetrator. Their photographs will be on our Instagram at Murder Tapes Podcast. It will also be available in the show notes. 16-year-old Melinda Lovelace was from New Albany, Indiana. Her father, Larry Lovelace, was a Vietnam War veteran who struggled to maintain stable employment. The limited income he did manage to earn was primarily spent on motorcycles and firearms. He exhibited violent behavior, was verbally abusive, struggled with alcoholism, and had predatory tendencies. Larry and Melinda's mother, Marjorie, had what they termed an open relationship, which essentially meant that Larry would allow his friends to engage in sexual acts with Marjorie. The couple frequently participated in orgies with individuals Larry met in bars. In a particularly horrific instance, he violently raped Marjorie while their 3 daughters remained in the house, able to witness and hear the assault. On one occasion, his violence left Marjorie hospitalized. The ongoing abuse drove her to attempt suicide on several occasions. There are indications that Larry may have also subjected his daughters to sexual abuse, though the specifics remain uncertain. Reports suggest he molested his daughters and nieces during their childhood. Melinda shared a bed with him until she turned 14. Larry and Marjorie divorced when Melinda was 14 years old. Following the divorce, Larry moved to Florida and had minimal contact with the family thereafter. In the wake of her tumultuous upbringing, Melinda battled with depression and often found herself in physical confrontations, both of which stem from her challenging home environment. Her academic performance suffered, resulting in her needing to repeat a grade. During this time, she was open about her lesbian identity, which was uncommon for a small town in the early 1990s. 17-year-old Lori Tackett was from Madison, Indiana, which is about 50 miles from New Albany. Lori came from a strict fundamentalist Christian household, primarily influenced by her mother. Her father worked in a factory, and both parents were abusive, promoting multiple visits from child services. Fascinated by the paranormal and vampirism, Lori began to self-harm in early 1991, at the age of 16. This behavior led to several hospitalizations, and she was eventually admitted to a psychiatric ward where she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. By September 1991, Lori had dropped out of high school. In October of that year, Lori moved to Louisville, where she met Melinda Lovelace and formed a close relationship. By the end of the year, Lori was spending most of her time with Melinda in both New Albany and Louisville, rarely returning to her home in Madison. 15-year-old Hope Rippey was also from Madison, Indiana. She had been friends with Lori from a very young age, but her parents weren't a fan of their friendship. Hope was known to engage in self-harm, and our last perpetrator, 15-year-old Tony Lawrence, was also born and raised in Madison, Indiana. She didn't know the other girls, but was friends with Hope. On the evening of June 10th, Lori, Hope, and Tony climbed into Lori's car, heading out for a rock concert. This would be Tony's first encounter with Lori. Lori didn't fit the typical 90s teenage mold. She had a stark white blonde haircut and dressed entirely in black, projecting a cold and unapproachable demeanor that immediately unsettled Tony. Lori turned to Hope and asked, "Did you tell her yet?" And Hope responded, "Tell her what?" Lori's chilling reply was, "We're going to kill a girl tonight." Tony was taken aback and struggled to process what she thought might be a macabre joke. Before heading to the concert, Lori drove to New Albany to pick up Melinda. Hope wasn't well acquainted with Melinda, and Tony had never met her. Melinda greeted them eagerly. She entered the car carrying a large kitchen knife and told Hope and Tony that she intended to scare a girl named Shanda. According to Melinda, Shanda was trying to emulate her and had stolen her girlfriend. Lori, Hope, and Tony had never met Shanda before. Shanda had never met Hope or Tony before, but she was intrigued by the chance to see Amanda. She asked them to return at midnight after her parents had gone to bed. Hope and Tony went back to the car, and the 4 girls headed to the rock concert. Around midnight, they drove to Shanda's house. On the way, Melinda expressed her eagerness to confront Shanda, though she also said she only intended to scare her. Hope and Tony were skeptical about Melinda's claim of killing Shanda, but Tony's unease grew. She decided not to join Hope at the door this time, unwilling to help lure Shanda to the car. Hope returned with Shanda, who got into the car. As they drove, Hope began to talk about Amanda, telling Shanda that Amanda was waiting for them at Witch's Castle in Utica, Indiana. Suddenly, Melinda sprang from her seat, grabbed Shanda by the hair, and pressed the blunt end of the knife against her throat. Shanda screamed and begged Melinda not to hurt her, but Melinda shouted, "Shut up, bitch," and began interrogating Shanda about her relationship with Amanda. Upon reaching the witch's castle, Melinda and Lori restrained Shanda. Lori intensified Shanda's fear by sharing chilling stories about the castle being full of dead people and saying she'd be next. In a panic, Shanda pleaded to return home. To further frighten her, Lori ignited a t-shirt emblazoned with a smiley face, mockingly declaring that Shanda could soon meet the same fiery fate. The group departed from the castle. Seeking an open gas station, Shanda mentioned one close to her residence. Though they initially headed there, Lori, aware that Shanda might attempt to escape or call for help, covered her with a blanket. They drove around aimlessly before ending up in a secluded wooded area near Lori's house. It was in this grim setting that the ordeal escalated. They made Shanda strip down to her underwear. Lori and Melinda unleashed a brutal attack, punching and kicking Shanda and attempting to cut her throat with a dull knife, which ultimately failed. Instead, they resorted to stabbing her in the chest and abdomen. While Hope and Tony remained in the car, Hope briefly exited to help restrain Shanda. They tied up her legs and arms, and Melinda threatened to cut off her long hair. After, she removed her rings and Mickey Mouse watch. There was even a moment all the girls pressed a button on her watch to play a musical sound to make fun of the situation. Lori and Melinda then strangled Shanda with a rope until she lost consciousness, subsequently placing her in the trunk of their vehicle. Upon returning to the car, they chillingly informed Hope and Tony that Shanda had died. When Lori heard Shanda stirring in the trunk, she returned to the vehicle and stabbed her to silence her cries. The two then set off on back roads with Shanda still confined in the trunk. Each time Shanda made a sound, Lori was quick to respond, inflicting more harm with a knife and tire iron. The duration of their drive remains unclear. Eventually, they returned to Lori's house, picked up Hope and Tony, and made their way back to the woods. Lori and Melinda, eager to show the others the results of their heinous act, encountered resistance from Tony, who refused to look. Hope, however, did not hold back, spraying Shanda with Windex and taunting, quote, "You're not looking so hot now, are you?" At a gas station stop, Tony purchased a large bottle of Pepsi, but Lori seized it, emptied its contents, and filled it with gasoline instead. Their journey continued north to Lemon Road, a rural area flanked by fields. There, Lori and Hope carried the still-living Shanda, wrapped in a blanket, to the edge of the fields, visible from the road. In a horrifying act, Lori dosed Shanda with gasoline from the Pepsi bottle and ignited her. Melinda would say, quote, "I'm glad she's dead. I'm glad she's out of me and Amanda's life. I could not imagine how horrifying that must have been to witness." The four girls then left the scene to have a meal at McDonald's as if nothing happened, where they joked about how Shanda looked like the sausages they were eating. Tony, overwhelmed and in distress, used a payphone to inform a friend of the murder. Following this, Melinda and Lori decided it was time for Tony to go home. After dropping Tony and Hope off, Melinda reached out to Amanda, claiming Shanda was dead. Skeptical, Amanda agreed to meet later. The trio wound up picking Amanda up and returning to Melinda's house. Inside, Melinda broke down in tears, revealing the sinister details of their actions. Amanda remained doubtful until they opened Lori's trunk, revealing it soaked in blood, with bloody handprints, long dark hairs, and one of Shanda's socks. Horrified, Amanda demanded to be taken home immediately. Around the same time the girls were at McDonald's, brothers Don and Ralph Foley set out on a quail hunting trip. As they drove about 8 miles past the Jefferson Proving Ground on a country road, they noticed a large, dark object on the side of the road. Initially, Dawn thought it might be a blow-up doll, but as they got closer, they realized it was the burned body of a young woman. The sight was so shocking that it reminded Don of his experiences in Vietnam. The brothers returned home and called the police, who instructed them to stay at the scene until the sheriff arrived. By around noon, Deputy Sheriff Randall Spry and Jefferson County Sheriff Buck Shipley arrived at the scene, followed by Detective Steve Henry and forensic expert Sergeant Curtis Wells around 1 p.m. The four men were stunned by the grim discovery. The girl's body had been burned beyond recognition and was found in a sexually suggestive pose. Sergeant Wells was convinced that the victim had been sexually assaulted. Meanwhile, Shanda's father, Steve Sharer, woke up and noticed Shanda was missing from her room. Initially, he thought she might be sleeping in the family's room downstairs. But when he couldn't find her, he grew concerned. Steve first called Shanda's friends and then reached out to his ex-wife Jackie to inform her of Shanda's disappearance. Jackie came over and they filed a missing persons report. Together with Steve's wife, they began searching for Shanda. At around 8:20 p.m., a distraught Toni, accompanied by her father, entered the police station. Overwhelmed, Toni detailed everything to Detective Henry. She recounted the plan to attend a rock concert with Lori and Hope, their trip to New Albany, and picking up Melinda. She identified the victim as Shanda, a girl around 12 or 13, and provided details about the locations they visited: the witch's castle, the woods, Lori's house, and the gas station where they filled a Pepsi bottle with gasoline. Toni also remembered Shanda's address. Detective Henry contacted Sergeant Wells to check if a missing persons report had been filed for that address, which turned out to be for 12-year-old Shanda. The description in the missing persons report matched the body found earlier. Dental records were used to confirm the body was indeed Shanda's. On January 12, 1992, Lori and Melinda were arrested. All 4 girls were charged as adults, and each accepted plea deals to avoid the death penalty. Lori and Melinda were both sentenced to 60 years in the Indiana Women's Prison. In 2004, Hope's sentence was reduced on appeal from 60 years to 35 years. Toni pleaded guilty to 1 count of criminal confinement and was sentenced to a maximum of 20 years. Devastated by the murder of his daughter, Steve Sharer found solace only in alcohol and tragically died from alcohol abuse in 2005 at the age of 53. During Melinda's sentencing hearing, the severe abuse inflicted by her father, Larry Lovelace, came to light. In February 1993, Larry was charged with rape, sodomy, and sexual battery, leading to his arrest. He spent 2 years in prison awaiting trial. However, due to Indiana's statute of limitations, 5 years, and the fact that many of these crimes occurred up to 25 years prior, the judge dismissed all charges except for 1 count of sexual battery. Larry pleaded guilty to this charge and received a sentence of time served, being released in June 1995. While in prison, Melinda became involved in training service dogs and earned recognition for her work with the ICAN, also known as Indiana Canine Assistance Dogs Program. She is known for her skill in training dogs that are particularly challenging. Charlie Patrizio, a burn victim and service dog breeder for ICAN, reached out to Shanda's mother to discuss Melinda's progress. After watching footage of Melinda training a dog in prison, Jackie commented, quote, "I had many times said that if you want to see as close to a person that has absolutely nothing inside of them, look in Melinda's eyes, because there's nothing there. But upon watching the video, she was sincere, she was compassionate. I think the ICAN program gives her something to love and care for, and there's never betrayal on either side." In 2012, Jackie made the surprising decision to donate a puppy named Angel to Melinda for training with ICAN, in Shanda's honor. Melinda would say, quote, "She helped me to actually heal, forgive, and grow, whether she wanted that or not. She did a good thing. I would thank her. I couldn't thank her enough. Angel is in good hands, and I'm doing it for Shanda, and I'm doing it for her." I think it's important to note that someone exhibiting good behavior in prison doesn't mean they're reformed. There have been lots of instances of murderers exhibiting good behavior simply so that they can get out and kill again. Remember that being good after committing a crime is the bare minimum. It shouldn't be something that's rewarded. Prisoners gain nothing from bad behavior. Melinda was released on September 5th, 2019. Toni was released on parole in 2000 after serving 8 years. Hope was granted parole in 2006 following 14 years in prison. On January 11th, 2018, the 26th anniversary of Shanda's death, Lori was released on parole. It's absolutely insane to me that all of Shanda's killers are out free. What they did to her was so brutal. I don't believe that those girls will ever truly function as normal people without soon exhibiting violent behavior. We have to just hope that they don't. As always, all evidence will be linked in the show notes, and feel free to follow our Instagram at Murder Tapes Podcast and my personal at Annalisa. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you on the next one.